What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another Too Good for Theaters video here. Today we're going to be breaking down some roster transactions made by the New England Patriots, as well as recapping the first week of training camp, and speculating about some questions that we have about the roster, as well as giving a little bit of projections about the roster as well. So let's get right into it here. So before we get into any of the matter-of-fact situations here, I kind of wanted to give my own opinion on the Matthew Judon versus New England front office debate here, and whether or not there should be extension talks or not between the New England Patriots and Matthew Judon. And for that question, 100% there should be extension talks between them. Matthew Judon has been one of the more productive players on the defensive side of the ball for the past seasons, and really has been your best defender ever since he's arrived here in New England. He's been a top 10 pass rusher for you, basically. Debatable, but I would like to think that he's a top 10 pass rusher. He's been elite in terms of that category. Sacks are not the only stat that really matters here, but having 34 sacks in 38 games is very productive here for Matthew Judon. And as he does get higher up there in age, he wants to bank on another contract. And we don't know what extent that he wants in terms of money in years. I would assume that he would try and squeeze as many years and as much money out of the New England Patriots as he can. I think a reasonable amount for him to be asking for is high teens to low 20s. And from a year standpoint, if I was in New England front office, I'd only be willing to give him a 2-year extension at most. A long-term deal here of 3 to 4 years packs a lot of risk considering Matthew Judon's age, and if you're going to really be able to bank on that production that he has been giving you, as well as someone who's coming off a season-ending injury with having a torn bicep. Granted, it's not like it's a lower body injury or one of those lasting injuries where it's kind of a quote-unquote career-defining injury. No, this is something that Matthew Judon has been able to rehab and has kind of had his body be able to recuperate and is fully recovered from. But that's still a concern if you are New England, and that's something that you can hold against Matthew Judon in a leverage standpoint. However, Matthew Judon has made some sacrifices for the Patriots here, just in terms of so far in this season, I would say. Today he came out after his whole fiasco of last week. He came out in pads for the first time here in New England. Even, I think, under the Belichick era, he actually never had practice with quote-unquote pads on. I think he just participated in practices. But he doesn't have a guaranteed salary until he makes the roster in week 1 here. So I perfectly understand not wanting to play right now if you're not guaranteed any money, as well as if you're only getting a base salary of $6 million and you're a top 10 pass rusher, you are severely underpaid. So really, I understand both sides here. I wouldn't justify Matthew Judon's actions on the field, really. Granted, I think they was a little overblown. I think he was more so kind of just being, I wouldn't call it lazy, but it really was more so just to prove a point. I don't really think he was disrupting practice that much, other than when Gerard Mayo had to ask him to move. And that's when kind of the whole fiasco came down. Obviously, there was the footage of him talking to Mayo, and then I guess he went back out to talk to Matt Groh as well as Elliott Wolf. But, I mean, I understand both sides, and hopefully they're able to get a deal done that really benefits both sides here. But I would like to see Matthew Judon back with the New England Patriots. He's a very good locker room guy, has been productive for you. But if he's asking for too much, you might have to cut your losses and say, hey, you're not seeking what we are. Your time frame really doesn't match what we're trying to build here. We might just have to trade you. And hopefully, if that's the case, they can get some proper trade compensation. Potentially a second-round pick. At that point, I don't think that they'd be able to get a second rounder. Maybe earlier in the offseason you would have. But it would probably be a 3rd to 4th round pick here for Matthew Judon, if that's what the Patriots were looking for. I would assume that's be what they were looking for in terms of draft compensation. I wouldn't really see them wanting to get a player back unless it's a young developing player. But I more so see kind of draft picks kind of being the central vocalized point of a trade if it was going to occur. So those are my thoughts on the Matthew Judon Patriots front office contract extension talks, and hopefully they can come to a deal that benefits both parties here. So in this next part of the video here, I really just kind of wanted to break down some of the observations that the media has made about Patriots training camp so far. And I wanted to run over some questions / projections I have about certain positional groups here with the Patriots, and some of the roster projections that I expect of who could be on the final roster, who may be left off. But let's get right into the first group here that I have, and kind of the highlight of training camp for many fans right here. It's a quarterback battle. It's going to be between Jacoby Brissett and Drake May here. Although I don't think it is much of a QB battle at this stage, I think that Jacoby Brissett is going to be the starter. And from what we've heard, Jacoby Brissett has been exactly what you've expected of him. He's been that steady veteran quarterback here who knows his offense, obviously playing alongside Alex Van Pelt in Cleveland, knows the scheme real well, knows a lot of the formations as well as kind of the plays that they like to run, kind of those bootleg play-action plays. And really the only issue that Jacoby Brissett really has right now is just kind of getting the proper chemistry down with his receivers, especially a guy like Kendrick Bourne, who's going to be predominant in this offense and is out right now. But good news is Pop Douglas also came back. I know he had that red not-contact jersey, so it's good to have Pop Douglas back on the field, where Jacoby Brissett really couldn't get that rapport with some of the receivers on the field. And speaking of receivers, two of the rookie receivers, obviously Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, have both been popping of late. That's a great sign. I'm very happy with that. I liked both those receivers coming out of the draft. Obviously, I made some videos on them breaking down what I liked about them. But it's kind of just good to see that they're all both having very positive training camp so far and getting on the same page with Jacoby Brissett and Drake May. But back to Jacoby Brissett here. I feel like Jacoby Brissett is the most pro-ready quarterback. I don't think that's any surprise here. And I feel like Jacoby Brissett probably is going to be starting week 1. I feel like it's going to take a lot from Drake May to kind of overtake Jacoby Brissett. But personally, I say we can wait as long as we have to with Drake May. And if Drake May is not ready, there's no need to rush him. There should be no pressure to put Drake May on the field right now other than just to see what you have in him. And I feel like you're going to get a good sense of what you have with him in the preseason. And hell, Drake May is probably going to be playing towards the later end of the season where the Patriots might not be as competitive in the win-loss record as they thought they were going to be. But hopefully Jacoby Brissett can kind of reset this offense and kind of give us the offensive competency that really has been lacking these past 2 seasons here in New England. And if he is able to do that, maybe the Patriots are able to make a little bit of noise and be a competitive team here. But we'll see what happens there. But moving on to Drake May, really the quote-unquote what he has been so far during training camp has been inconsistent. Really not much of a shocker. Everyone who really kind of labeled Drake May as that guy knew it was going to take a little bit. He was the quote-unquote project quarterback of the big 3. And, I mean, that's what kind of the state that the Patriots were in here. The Patriots aren't at any pressure to kind of win now. They obviously are going a rebuild here. So why not select Drake May? And really, Drake May's kind of played his part in terms of being inconsistent. But he has had a lot of flashes. It's noted that his footwork and his mental progressions have developed since he has gotten here. He had a great OTA session as well as mini camp. And they were kind of looking to kind of see if he can carry that momentum back into training camp here. He started off really well. He's kind of struggled the last couple of days. But the good news is, the most recent day and the day of this recording, where he did struggle with the pads early on, pads came back on today, and he quote-unquote had his best offensive day, which is an encouraging sign to kind of see that mental fortitude that he might show here and really just show that he could deal with a little bit of adversity. Obviously, he dealt with a lot of it at North Carolina with just kind of how that offense was more so ran. But it's good to see that Drake May can put some bad days behind him and kind of continue this progression. Obviously, you're not going to see the best of Drake May every single day, and you quote-unquote want him to get better each day. But as long as he's doing that and maybe learning from his mistakes, that's a good sign here for him. And eventually he's going to take the reins of this franchise quarterback kind of lingo that everyone perceives him to be. Good news is also as well, Joe Milton has overtook Bailey Zappi for the third QB roster spot here. And really, there's not much speculation about Joe Milton starting. He has done a really good job. He has progressed, and he's kind of on that same trajectory as Drake May, I would say. Maybe not as rapid. Obviously, he's not dealing with the amount of reps that Drake May is, and he's not given the opportunity that Drake May has. But it's kind of just good to see that Joe Milton is developing in his own right here with overtaking Bailey Zappi. I don't know if that's more so just speaking that Joe Milton's doing a good job, or if Bailey Zappi is kind of just falling out of favor that much. But I'm going to assume it's just Joe Milton doing a good job. And from what we heard, we've had some pretty ridiculous takes in the national media about Joe Milton of late, which I don't believe. But hell, if it does end up happening, that's a great job for Joe Milton, and the Patriots were able to hit on a late-round draft pick. What you do with Drake May in that stance, I don't know. But if that happens, that's fine as well. But it's a good sign that Joe Milton and Drake May are both progressing, and it's a really good sign that Jacoby Brissett has this offense performing and competing against a pretty solid New England defense here in training camp. So that's basically what I got from the quarterback position, and I'm excited to see how in the next weeks of training camp as well as the preseason games this kind of QB situation unfolds. So moving over to the next positional group here, I really wanted to talk about the offensive line, specifically the offensive tackles on this team, because I feel like the Patriots kind of have their plan along the interior of the offensive line, having Sidney So at the left guard position, David Andrews as your starting center, and probably Michael Onwenu at your starting right guard. Obviously, Michael Onwenu, an elite guard in this league, potential top 10. But if the Patriots are struggling that badly at the tackle spot, you might see Michael Onwenu kick out to tackle and then bring in a guy like Layden Robinson or potentially Nick Lever as that starting right guard for you. But as of right now, the potential starting tackle spots are both open, I see. And I see 4 candidates amongst these Patriots players here, really who can take over as these starters along the offensive line at the tackle position. And that's going to be veteran Chuks Okorafor, veteran Calvin Anderson, veteran Vidarian Lowe, and rookie Caden Wallace. And specifically, I would give the edge to Chuks Okorafor and rookie Caden Wallace. While I do think that Caden Wallace, I know that the Patriots want to see him move over to the left side. I do think it's best for his development to stay on that right side for now and just have Chuks Okorafor stay or move over to the left tackle position. They're both natural right tackles, and I think that if someone were to have a more seamless move over, it would just simply be Chuks Okorafor due to his experience in the league so far. But if the Patriots are very high on Caden Wallace, he could very much be the starting left tackle here, and having Chuks Okorafor stay at his natural right tackle position. But the Patriots have been mixing it up all training camp so far. You might see some days where it's those two, like said. You might see a day where it's Chuks Okorafor on the left side, Calvin Anderson on the right side. I know today that Vidarian Lowe was actually taking starter reps at the left tackle spot, and Chuks Okorafor was at right tackle. So if I had to bank on someone being a starter, like a lock-in starter, I would most likely say Chuks Okorafor is going to fill one of those two roles. And after that, I'd say it's more so kind of a coin toss. For me, I feel like it's just going to be kind of whoever's playing the best at whatever position. Either that's right tackle or left tackle. Whoever's kind of playing the best and has the most momentum heading into the regular season here. But these offensive tackles spots are really going to be a kind of a highlight to this Patriots offensive line. And they're going to be the death of this offense if this offense struggles. Because we've really seen that the past 2 seasons here, where really the tackles have struggled. And with that, the entirety of the offensive line has kind of struggled. So Hopefully Scott Peters is kind of able to get these guys on the same page, regain that continuity, and hopefully they're going to be able to kind of produce better than the offensive line has these past 2 seasons and kind of get back to that top 10 production that this offensive line was kind of known for during the Brady era, as well as the first season under Mac with McDaniels and stuff like that. So I'm looking forward to see who's kind of starting at those tackle spots here, and kind of excited to see these rookie offensive linemen, guys like Caden Wallace as well as Layden Robinson, see if they can kind of put a stamp on some playing time here and see if they can kind of get themselves carved into a role. So excited to see what happens along the offensive line here. Moving to another positional group here that I do have some questions about is actually the running back position. And not Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson. I feel like we know where we're getting with those two. It's more so the depth behind those two. And I feel like Jermichael Hastings kind of has solidified himself as the front runner of Kevin Harris or Jermichael Hastings to kind of be that third back in this system. And I do think that the Patriots are going to have to carry 4 backs. So you might see Kevin Harris and Jermichael Hastings both on this roster. Or if they go outside of the organization and bring in another guy to kind of fill in that 4th role here. But with Ramondre Stevens' injury history here, you have to probably keep 4 backs, especially with Antonio Gibson has had a little bit of nicks and knacks here too. So the running back room, the depth more so really has me concerned. And Jermichael Hastings kind of fills that role similar to Antonio Gibson of kind of being that third down back, that receiving back, and where Ramondre really is the quote-unquote workhorse back, I feel like that's the role that Kevin Harris would have to play. However, Kevin Harris really hasn't solidified that in his time in the league. Granted, he hasn't had the most time to earn that role, but this would be the season that I feel like he would have to kind of solidify himself to stay on this roster. Or if New England goes outside of the organization to kind of bring back a potential workhorse back or guy who could handle a little more loadage than a guy like Antonio Gibson or Jermichael Hastings from outside of their organization. So I think it's really just kind of interesting how the Patriots kind of handle this running back situation, how many backs they keep on the roster. I think you got to at least keep 4. And I'm excited to see whether they feel like Kevin Harris can kind of solidify himself as that 4th back, as well as Jermichael Hastings being that 3rd back, or if they even seek to go outside of the organization and bring in more depth here to kind of compete and see who can earn that kind of rotational back role here. Next up, I wanted to move to the defensive line here. They have a lot of players who actually signed extensions with the team. Devon Gottschall, Josh Uche, Anthony Jennings, and a bunch of returning players, guys like Dietrich Wise, and obviously Keon White on his rookie contract, as well as Daniel Aquale and some others as well. But really the big question here, is Matthew Judon going to be suiting up for the Patriots here? I hope so. But in even worse news, you have Christian Barmore dealing with some health issues of his own. So I do feel like there's a little bit of a lack of depth here on the interior of the defensive line. And it's going to be up to guys like Daniel Aquale, Armon Watts, obviously guys like Jeremiah Farms, to really step into that role and kind of have to create their role as being a pass rushing defensive tackle, which is really what Christian Barmore is. He has become a much better overall defensive tackle. He's very good in the run game. But that's where the Patriots are going to be missing him the most, is interior pressure up the middle from a defensive tackle who can get some pressure on the quarterback. And that's kind of rare in this league a little bit, or at least rare at the point to which Christian Barmore was able to produce. Because Christian Barmore was one of the top 10 defensive tackles last season in this league. So it's going to be very hard for the Patriots to kind of replicate that production that they may not have from Christian Barmore this season due to some of the health concerns there. But I'm a little interested to see kind of what they do. Obviously, you could put Dietrich Wise on the inside. He's not just strictly a defensive end. He's more so kind of someone you could put all over the line. And this is going to carve out opportunity for guys like Daniel Aquale to kind of earn a larger role. Devon Gottschall, you might have to ask a little more of him from a pass rush sense, really make him kind of earn that extension a little more. maybe you kick Keon White inside, kind of play that semi-Dietrich Wise role of you can move him to the edge, move him inside, stuff like that. And I'm kind of interested to see if this really accelerates the Matthew Judon contract extension talks, or if the Patriots are just unwilling to give him that extension whatsoever. I feel like if something were to give, and this is probably something that Matthew Judon could actually hold as leverage over the Patriots, that defensive line question now, the gap that Christian Barmore has left filled, really might be able to use Matthew Judon for contract extension here. But I'm kind of a little worried about the defensive line. I know we have a lot of talent there. You have really good pass rushers, guys like Josh Uche, Matthew Judon. Hopefully he's going to be suiting up for you. Guys like Dietrich Wise, who's produced in the past for you. Keon White coming off a very good regular season or rookie season. Then you have good run stuffers like Anthony Jennings and Devon Gottschalk. So there are bodies there. But I'm just a little concerned where I don't really see that elite defensive lineman on the field right now, especially without Matthew Judon and Christian Barmore, with both their question marks coming into this season. So Patriots really need to figure out what's going on along this defensive line, which will help them exponentially across the defense. So the last group I really wanted to talk about here was the Patriots secondary. And I feel like this is probably the most stacked group here amongst all positional groups on the Patriots. It was either between this or the defensive line. And with the question marks at the defensive line position, I feel like the secondary is probably the highlight of this team. They probably have the most proven talent in the secondary right now, as well as that's probably just going to be the group that really kind of maintains this defense, especially with the defensive line kind of fluctuating a little bit. But I'm kind of interested to kind of see the seasons that these guys are going to have and what each player kind of what their role is here. And obviously, I'm going to start off with Christian Gonzalez. Hopefully he can build on what he did earlier in his rookie season and kind of play out. Hopefully he can play a full season this year. And we can hopefully kind of find out what we truly have in here. Obviously, he had a great step or his great introduction in his rookie season with winning AFC Offensive or Defensive Rookie of the Month. But hopefully he can carry that over and kind of maintain that quote-unquote shutdown corner label that people are starting to give him and kind of work towards that quote-unquote like that Stephon Gilmore role that a lot of Patriots fans kind of compared him to, especially after how he played last season. But I'm also excited to kind of see the Jones brothers with Jonathan Jones and Marcus Jones, and whether or not there's going to be a mix-up at that second corner spot, especially along the boundaries. Because I feel like Jonathan Jones probably is best suited for the slot. And you have a guy like Alex Austin, who last season showed he was an NFL caliber player, did a real nice job in OTAs and minicamp, has been a little silent here in training camp, but I guess from a corner standpoint, that's kind of a good thing. You're not giving up a lot of plays. So I'm kind of interested if they keep Jonathan Jones on the outside like they did last season, or if they move him back to the inside, put Alex Austin as that boundary corner. But that also leaves the question of what do you do with Marcus Jones? Because Marcus Jones is certainly, with that height deficiency, I really don't see the Patriots kind of putting him on the outside at all. I more so see either Alex Austin or Jonathan Jones being that boundary corner. And if Jonathan Jones is in or on the boundary, Marcus Jones is going to take over as that slot corner. And personally, I feel like that's probably the best three-man corner group that you could have in a nickel set, having Jonathan Jones and Christian Gonzalez as your boundary corners and putting Marcus Jones in the slot. But honestly, between how Alex Austin performed towards the end of last season and how he's kind of held his own here in training camp and minicamp and OTAs, it's really an encouraging sign to kind of see that the Patriots have that depth. And where if they need to, they can move Jonathan Jones back to the inside, put Alex Austin on the outside, and kind of see what happens from there. Also excited to kind of see what happens with guys like Isaiah Bolden, whose rookie season kind of got cut short last season. I have Isaiah Bolden as a roster, not a roster lock, but I have him on my 53-man roster right now just due to the plays that he's been making on the defensive side of the ball, but also his special teams work that we saw a lot during his college stint at Jackson State. You also have a guy like Marcellus Dial, the rookie. I probably don't see him making this roster this season. I see him more so as a practice squad candidate, but I'm excited to kind of see what he's able to do and whether he's able to carve himself out a role in that spot. And then moving over to the safeties, obviously I think you have your main two with Jabril Peppers and Kyle Duggar. You lock both them up, but I'm kind of interested to see what they do with Marte Mapu, as well as Jalen Hawkins. Obviously, Marte Mapu has to show he can stay healthy, but he's kind of that quote-unquote hybrid linebacker. Kind of built a little bit like Jabril Peppers. Kind of plays that similar role. As well as Kyle Duggar. They're all pretty hybrid-like. They can certainly all play down low in the box. That's probably where all three of them are probably at their best as well. So I'm interested to see if Marte Mapu can kind of carve himself out a role and stay healthy here and just see kind of how the Patriots use him. Whether they use him more so as a safety, a deep man, whether they put him in the box safety role, or if they move him more so to the linebacker core, which can always help more, which always needs more help in terms of like pass covering linebackers. And I feel like that's where Marte Mapu might be able to shine. However, Jalen Hawkins, I feel like is that one guy on this team where if you said, who's your quote-unquote free safety, or that guy who you could just put deep and kind of have to cover that big portion of the field deep, I feel like it might be Jalen Hawkins. I feel like that's where he's going to have to earn his role on this team. Because between guys like Kyle Duggar, Marte Mapu, and Jabril Peppers, those are all three box safeties. And they really have that area kind of covered here from a roster standpoint. So if Jalen Hawkins is going to make this roster, I feel like it's going to kind of have to be that Devin McCourty type role of being that guy who really covers the large portion of the field where you can put deep and just know, kind of command your defense and know if we're putting him deep, he's going to be able to double this guy and stuff like that and really cover that portion of the field and hopefully blanket that portion of the field. And a guy like Joshua Bledsoe has been here a while, probably out on the roster for me right now. Probably there's a sizable chance that he probably is not going to make it. But that's another box safety guy and a guy who can play some special teams, as well as Brendan Schooler. Brendan Schooler is certainly going to be on this team just due to what he does from a special team standpoint. But I'm excited to see if those two can kind of carve themselves out a role defensively once again. And really excited to kind of see what happens in this secondary. Will Shaun Wade be able to maintain everything or kind of keep that mojo going of somehow making this roster every year? A guy like Marco Wilson, is he a guy that you might want to put on the roster and maybe leave a guy like Isaiah Bolden off or a guy like Marcellus Dial off and have Marco Wilson over them? Really interested to see, but a lot of competition from the secondary at this point in time in training camp. And I feel like these preseason games are really going to dictate a lot of what happens with the secondary. And if there was a group that I was most confident in between talent-wise and depth-wise, it's certainly the secondary. So I'm excited to kind of see how this secondary kind of puts their print on this defense, and kind of excited to see how DeMarcus Covington kind of uses these players here. So real excited to see what happens with this secondary this season. All right, everyone, that's going to wrap it up for this video. Expect some more training camp coverage coming up in the next couple weeks, as well as some potential winners and losers for some of the preseason games here. But thank you so much again for watching. If you have any thoughts, let me know in the comments below. I know it's a little bit longer of a video, but if you managed to stay this long, much appreciated. And I'm looking forward to bringing some more content from you from a Patriots standpoint here. So thanks once again.